I'm Yeşim. I'm a play expert and a futurist. My background, what I do is, my whole aim is actually using play as a catalyst for the creativity and bringing our own insight and creative work and courage to make something out of it. What I've been doing in the last 2 years as an independent consultant on play and as a futurist is I've been using play for the corporations, universities, and making them play. What my background is actually, I worked as a futurist and a play expert for Hasbro, Lego, and Toys R Us. As a play expert, I've been using workshops and play workshops in order to cultivate this creativity and making people to think out of the box, because it's really important to make people to see different connections. And I worked with some of the really well-known companies like Otis, UTC, and for the universities like Warwick University and Economy and some of the other ones. And as well as I've been talking about play and how it actually affects our lives in the World Innovation Conference and different kind of conventions. And it's been my passion because I started as a toy designer in this world. And I'm a graduate of a toy design, and I worked in Toys R Us, and then worked at Lego, and then worked at Hasbro as a futurist. And I was looking for 5 to 10 years ahead where the world is going in the play experiences and how we can actually challenge the children, but not just the children and adults, and be in this amazing world and make them immersed in this play activities. And I became extremely immersed and extremely passionate about how I can actually use the play in education and learning between the ages of 0 till 6. And that's how it started for me. It's because the way the children think is actually their mind is all about observing. Their mind is all about questioning and exploring and experimenting their world. This beautiful world is also they can take risks. And that's so important for us to come up with new ideas and embracing the mistakes and also challenging them and mastering them. So for me, it became so obvious that play actually really helps us to be much more creative. That's why my bet is, if we can play more, and if we have much more playful minds, we start to combine all these connecting different dots. And these dots can be inspirations, intuitions, and different kind of insights. And once we put these together, there's a wow effect, there's a eureka, there's some kind of an amazing moment comes about. And that's the time, actually, we are starting to see different kind of perspectives. And that's really important for us to create a bigger vision, especially for the future of ourselves and for our children. And why am I saying play? What is play really? As Dr. Stuart Brown always says, is play is a state of mind. Play is not just for children, it's for all of us to be able to think about it. And why it's coming from the children? It's also because the way they discover. For example, the first time the children looking and finding their feet, they start to discover that they are able to go into walk on them. And that's the most important part. And when they are exploring new things, for example, trying to taste something, that's the time they are actually finding new opportunities. And combining two random pieces, when they put these together, they are actually creating a new experience, new ways of looking at a certain situation, and deciding how they can actually create a high-rise tower, for example. And it's the time they are immersed, they are in the flow. And this is not just for children, this is not just for humankind, this is also for all the animals. You see it everywhere, actually. For example, an elephant trying to figure out his own surrounding, or a bear is trying to explore how he can play and how he can be with his own surrounding. And this is from actually a real true story. This is from a North Pole, a polar bear actually wants to attack these huskies. They were chained. And he comes very closer to them, and all of a sudden the husky is actually waving his tail, and they start to go into this playful manner. This is so important because this is how actually play is so contagious. It makes us to be in a different world. And more importantly, we start to imagine much better. We are becoming in this amazing world that we can start to see in different ways. We start to create different visions. And I think it's so important that Einstein's states, If you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. This is so true because this is the time you are creating different scenarios. This is the time you are actually making up new perspectives. This is the time you are actually going through your own fears and trying to understand how you can behave with other people in different ways. And unfortunately, right now, there is a huge problem. The huge problem is 98% of the children at the age of 3, they can be amazingly creative, but this falls down amazingly. At the age of 25, we see them, 2% of people has this kind of creativity. And this is scary because the reason why this is happening is because of the education system. The education system is preparing us to fight for the tests, and that we have to memorize, and we have to be in very much structured way of thinking. And this kills the creativity slowly and slowly. While they were playing before, all of a sudden they are totally boxed in. And this is not just happening in Turkey. This is a big issue in Turkey, but this is also happening all around the world. And there are so many thought leaders thinking how they can actually use uninstruction, unstructured, and a different level of learning, especially in this time of the world. And play is amazingly important for research. Because this is the time you are so open, this is the time you give yourself the space and the permission to be okay with anything around you, and that you start to question it, you start to actually combine different information. And you need to give your own children also to be more messy in a way. Like this one. I was very much inspired. So I worked in different countries with different children. And I was so much inspired by, especially the English women, how they let their children be messy. How they say, okay, you can go and play with anything and everything and just make a mess. But this is the time that they are going to be actually connecting different strings. And this is the child. She's kind of trapped in between the strings. But she was having a lot of fun. And I think she learned a lot. And giving them the activities, giving them the different kind of ways of looking at and observing. We are doing landscape in London from the samples, back of samples building. And at SEV, I have created different kind of innovative, in order to explain innovation, and I created different workshops for children. And with them, actually, we learned that you need to become more hands-on. You need to understand when you are hands-on and you are observing and exploring and experimenting, you learn actually why some of the things do happen and why some of the things doesn't happen. And this makes them learn so much better. This is from Izmir. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I gave a workshop with 8 to 12-year-old kids. And when I asked them to create some of these uninstructed way of creating a ship, they were a bit paralyzed. They looked at me like, what are we going to do? And then I learned, it was a surprise for me. Actually, I understood because we are giving them so structured play sets, for example, or instructed way of learning things and directing them, they didn't know how to do some of the things by themselves. So that's why, for me, it became my mission in a way that I want to give all around everybody, actually, without an instructed way of thinking, that you can create something so much better. And why am I saying this is a danger and why we need to become more creative is because we are not anymore in the information age. We are actually coming into the conceptual age. What this means is in the information age, you were collecting all this information. That was your power. But now we need to actually create something out of this. You have a lot of information, and the most important thing is what do you make out of this? And because of this whole global change, all these dangers are coming in. And with the new technologies are emerging and exponentially growing, and that we need to learn a new language, which is called programming and coding. And we don't know the preparing kids for jobs that do not even exist. Like you are probably aware that in the last couple of years, there are so many things that came up that we are not aware that they will be today. And even we are now becoming more engaged in totally different ways with each other. We are becoming more playful, we are becoming more open, and we want to be connected. So in this kind of a world, we need to become more of makers, we need to become more of doers, and we need to become more creatives, actually. So we can become frontiers, not just followers. And what this means is 21st century skills is we need to become adaptive and flexible and critical thinkers and entrepreneur mindsets and curious with everything and anything around us. And we have to have our divergent thinking. And when it comes to the culture and the play, they are more like interwoven organisms. They combine, they are into each other. So they actually, once you start within yourself, that you become a creative and a playful person, then the second person is going to become, and then a whole culture is actually going to become a creative culture. So that's the reason play has changed a definition for me. Play is more about, it's the outcome of manifestations of connections with ourselves, with others, with our surrounding, to make much more better, deeper meanings. And how do I actually create it for the businesses is also, because I saw it from the children, then I thought, why don't I bring it to the adults? Why can't I make it for a whole culture? Because first of all, we need to become, as adults, the makers and the creators, so that we can actually pass it on to our own children and see that they can become like that. And that's how I started doing example from Play to Innovate workshops. These are some of these examples that I made different audiences to play. Here they are actually rescuing Rapunzel from the tower with different kind of pieces. But here you see it, they become so immersed into them. They become so childlike, their face changes. These people are really high-level managers. They are not just, just wanted to play, but these people were immersed. They became like childlike. And that's the time they were communicating with each other, no matter what level they were. They did understand each other so well. And they were making up strategies, like serious decision-making, and really thinking how to get that Rapunzel from that tower and get that witch to be, killed or something like that. But that was a real story, but at the end, they became so immersed. I couldn't even take any of the spaghettis from them. They were very angry to me. And this is another one. This is the time they are actually creating like a mechanics and immersing themselves to create a whole world, ecosystems. You really create it when you are a child also. Or deconstructing and constructing new ways of looking at what was there and then making something new out of it. This is the time you are so immersed, like the kids. They will break and then they will remake it. And they learn something out of this. And also collaborating with each other and understanding each other, and it becomes a whole story. So, for me, finally, actually, if you want to be seriously more a frontier and not just following, and to become more makers ourselves, so that we can pass it on to our own children, and then they can become, and they can rescue us from different situations, we really need to become more playful, and we need to use the power of play. Thank you.